He waited. That's how Adrian Cross treated anything valuable. You knew the merger would collapse before it was announced, he said, his voice a calm certainty. Across from him, Serena Vale sipped her tea, her gaze steady. So did you? A quiet understanding passed between them, a silent recognition of two minds operating on the same level. For the first time since her rebirth, Serena felt no need to hide. Not because she trusted him, but because she respected him. And respect, she knew, was a currency far rarer than loyalty. They met often after that. Never alone, and never by accident. Their conversations were a careful dance, a strategic circling of the same hidden truths. One evening, Adrian observed, "You don't enjoy winning." Serena's reply was simple, precise. "I enjoy accuracy." A faint smile touched his lips. It was then that Serena realized something unsettling. She wasn't afraid of him discovering her secrets. She was afraid of how easily he understood her. Silence. Meanwhile, Leela Vale, the woman who had taken her place, watched the headlines with growing unease. Every new success, every brilliant move in the market seemed to bear Serena's shadow. "She's copying me," Leela insisted to anyone who would listen. But the mirror no longer reflected the same confident heiress. Leela had always been praised, cuddled, celebrated. But Serena, in her first life and this one, had been sharpened. Slowly, the world began to notice the difference, responding not to entitlement, but to undeniable competence. For the very first time, Leela felt a cold, unfamiliar emotion take root. It was fear. Serena often dreamed of her first life, not the bitter betrayal, not the lonely abandonment. She dreamed of the exact moment she realized she was smarter than everyone in the room and had chosen silence over arrogance. That single decision had cost her everything. This time, she would not repeat the mistake. She would still be silent, yes, but she would never, ever be invisible again. Adrian invited her to dinner. It wasn't a date. It was a negotiation. "You never rely on emotion," he stated, less a question than an observation. "I rely on clarity," Serena answered, her voice even. "And love?" he asked, pushing just a little further. She considered this for a moment. "Love," she said quietly, "is only dangerous when it distracts from the truth." In that instant, Adrian realized something profound. Loving Serena wouldn't soften her. It would sharpen them both. The Vale family finally made their move. They tried to remove Serena from the board, quietly, legally, and decisively. But it failed. Not because Serena fought back with fury and noise, but because the contracts she had put in place had already accounted for betrayal. When the final vote was tallied, a heavy silence filled the room. The patriarch, her own grandfather, finally understood. She had expected this all along. And in their world, expectation was power. Eventually, Adrian uncovered the truth, the one secret she held closest. Serena had lived this life before, different choices, different endings, but the same players on the board. "You remember the outcomes," he said slowly, fitting the last piece of the puzzle into place. "Yes," she replied, without hesitation. "And you still chose restraint?" he asked, a hint of awe in his voice. She looked at him then, her eyes clear and deep. Knowledge doesn't excuse cruelty. It was that exact moment Adrian fell in love not with her brilliance, but with her discipline. They didn't confess their feelings in a rush of emotion. They simply aligned. Together, they began to dismantle competitors, not with scandals or hostile takeovers, but with ruthless efficiency. Chaos was replaced by order. Across the industry, whispers began to circulate. Two minds had started moving as one, and Serena felt it then, not weakness, not dependency, but something incredibly rare. Trust, without a single illusion. The Vale Empire, once so mighty, began to face its collapse. It wasn't from sabotage. It was from exposure. Every unethical shortcut, every overlooked flaw, every secret buried in the past was brought into the light, not by Serena's hand, but by the weight of their own corruption. She stood before the press, a calm figure in the center of the storm. "I never sought revenge," she said, her voice carrying across the silent room. "I corrected what should never have existed, and the world listened. Because the truth, when delivered with such quiet conviction, is unstoppable." Serena Vale no longer belonged to the past. She walked forward, not as an heiress, not as a victim, but as an architect of her own design. Adrian walked beside her. There were no grand promises, no dramatic declarations. There was only a shared direction. As the city lights reflected in the glass and steel of the skyscrapers around them, Serena had one final thought. Her rebirth hadn't given her power. It had given her choice. And she would never surrender that again.